Hello, my name is Molly Yanis, and I'm just jumping on quickly to talk a little bit about a project management office and some of the questions we began recently about implementing project management offices or PMOs. So, what is a project management office? It's basically this concept of an organization that helps standardize the intake, execution, and prioritization of projects. And the goal behind it is that the organization is able to focus their resources on the highest impact work and really lay the groundwork, set the structure in place for successful project delivery and really maximizing return on investment. And this is well aligned with ECHO's goals of maximizing the ROI on projects, right? So some organizations know what a PMO is and they reach out specifically like we need help setting up or configuring a PMO. But more often than not, we have clients reach out or potential teams reach out to talk to us about their frustrations and their pain points and their challenges in these areas. So specifically, resource forecasting, capacity planning. I don't know where my resources are. I don't know where my people are. I don't know how many people I'm going to need for 2022. I don't know who to hire, who to use contractors for, etc. Or maybe it's just frustration, which is whether it's coming up from the project manager and project team side, which is I'm having to update the same information in 3 different locations in 2 different tools, and people are still interrupting me day in and day out, asking me what the status of this or that is, and some people are getting left out of communications, right? Or maybe it's the leadership team saying, wow, we're constantly over budget, we're behind schedule, we're not delivering on the scope and quality that we're expecting to, we're not getting the return on investment. Like there's got to be a better way. We've got to structure this better. It can be a matter of lack of accountability and ownership. So sometimes that comes up as a complaint from the project team, just being like, I, senior leadership is constantly changing their minds, their priorities are constantly changing. Like, I'm not even clear what I should be working on right now. In other times, it's just like one project has 7 owners, but then that means that really it doesn't have any ownership, and the roles and responsibilities aren't really defined that well. So you don't know who needs to do what in order to be successful. Oftentimes, we're hearing about lack of communication and really interdependencies between projects not being clearly articulated, not being recognized, or really oftentimes it can come out of like a significant blow up firefight that they've had recently. So if there was a project or a product that was launched and it just caused huge disruptions to operations and it kind of backed up all the other projects and work going on, at some point people can just throw up their hands and say, you know what, we need help, we need to get an outsider in, to fix this problem. And that's where Echo likes to come in. So when we talk about a project management office, I like to first think through like a really high level workflow of what we're saying. So the first is how do projects come in? And I don't just mean projects. Sometimes it's ideas, it's recommendations, it's insights, it's not always a perfectly packaged project. Maybe it's much bigger than a project. It's a whole program. But how does potential work come in, get noted, like get identified, and hopefully be all in the same place so that you can compare it against each other, right? So one of the first questions I ask any of my clients is like, do you have a single list of projects or do you have 5 lists? Because if you have 5 lists, it's a different problem than if you don't have any lists than if you don't have one list. Okay. The next piece is this project execution. So once a project has been approved, it's been, leadership is saying like, yep, go forward with this. It moves into this project execution phase. Now there's a lot of different project phases in that project execution, but I like to just, bulk it all together. Let's put your product methodology aside, whether you're agile, more traditional and waterfall, whatever tool you have, like you track the project execution in some way, shape, or form. When the project goes live, then you're going to close the project out. So you're focusing on your projects that are in progress, right? So new potential projects, projects that are in progress, projects that are ramping down and getting archived. So it's really important that there's an approval and prioritization process. Not every idea that comes in is a good idea. So who reviews it, who approves it, how does it get prioritized against ongoing work and other potential new work as well. So I call this approval and prioritization phase, which should happen during project intake, not during project execution, right? There's this approval to go live. So this is what what does a project plan, what does a project need to meet in order to be ready to be out in production, to be live in front of clients, to be out in your team, and to potentially, be moved into operations. So what is that approval criteria and who is involved in that conversation? Um, Once a project is approved, going back, I think a little bit about how am I standing up a new project, right? Maybe it's a project plan, maybe it's a planner board, maybe it's whatever tool you're using. Maybe you have a risk log or a raid log or a project log. Is there a budget sheet that needs to get filled out, or a charter, or I mean, where does the project live, and where do you see visibility on it? How, like, what does the project manager or lead get when a new project comes in? What does that look like? And then similarly, okay, so we have all this project documentation, maybe there's requirements documents, etc., tasks. Where does it go at the end? So that it's not clogging up alongside all the active projects. Okay. So this piece in between, I talk about project delivery. This is where we dive into, if you're interested, we do have a intro to project management class. We'll talk a little bit about different project phases and methodologies and different structures, but there's some sort of project methodology associated here with how you deliver projects. There can be different types of projects in your organization, but it is important that you have some sort of methodology. Do you have stage gates? Do you have key milestones or something like that that need to be communicated up and out throughout the organization outside of just the immediate project team? Okay, and this is that project delivery component. And then if you look at like a really mature PMO, when you're thinking about it, you want to actually be looking at what is the return on investment? Like, what is the business case for every new idea or potential project that's coming in? And then even after the project is closed, because oftentimes ROI can be, 3 months, 6 months, a year out, how are we measuring this return on investment and making sure that we're actually getting what we are expecting from this project? So having success criteria, having some measurability. And again, this gray, I have it in kind of gray, I have it as bookends. This is something, I mean, with all project management, any system implementation, right? Like progressive elaboration, we mature as we move. I don't always recommend a client start out with estimating ROI if they'd have no concept of that in their organization. Like, let's structure the project intake first and get all of our data in place and then continue to mature as an organization. Okay. So when I talk about project and intake and approval, let me just break that down a little bit more granularly, okay? So usually there's some sort of intake form. Maybe, maybe it's a comment box right now, or maybe it's a slide or something like that that a manager or VP has to put together in order to propose a new project. There's usually some sort of basic level data. So whether it's a project name, maybe it's a person that's recommending the project or teams that might be impacted. Maybe it's just a quick project description. I mean, there's some basic level of information. And sometimes it comes in through a form. Sometimes it comes in through a meeting, a senior leadership meeting, a department meeting or something like that. But somehow this idea of a project that's outside of operational work comes into play, and it needs to be captured with some basic information. Okay, and that's what I'm talking about with this intake form. After this initial basic level information of this idea, then we need to take it to the next level, which is we have to review it by someone else. We need to think through what the implications of it are. And oftentimes, if it's a big enough, component, we want to have some version of a business case. And when I'm saying a business case, it doesn't need to be a 10-page document. It doesn't need to be complex. It can be as simple as, this is the problem that we're looking at trying to solve. These are some of the solutions that we've looked at, and this is the one we're recommending. Here's some of the risks or assumptions that we've made. Again, as you're more mature, like, here's some of the ROI. This is what we think might be the duration or effort. Oftentimes when I'm starting out with effort, I'm doing something like small, medium, large, extra large, and I have kind of ranges of hours there, pretty large ranges. I might have like a estimated duration where I'm saying like, okay, this is less than 3 months, this is 3 to 6, 6 to 12 months, maybe more than 12 months, right? So it's some high level estimates. I usually try to be 50% accurate here. I know it's crazy, but like, spend, I talk about a lot about like diminishing returns, right? Like at this point you need enough information, but you don't want to spend a huge amount of time here when you haven't even had it reviewed by like the steering committee yet. So finally, once you have the intake basic information, then you've had someone review it, you have some sort of business case, you bring it to senior leadership, steering committee, executive leadership, whatever you call that, in your organization. And what you're really looking for here is approval, but it's not just like yay or nay, I approve this to move forward. You're also really looking for some input on prioritization compared to all the initiatives, all other initiatives that are going on, not just the ones that are getting submitted for approval at the same time as yours, but hey, this is part of a bigger ecosystem of all the projects that are going on in your organization, right? Just getting a yay, go forward with the project doesn't really give you the authority that you need in order to get resources and all those other components. So whether or not the approval and prioritization happens in the same meeting, whether the approval then goes to some sort of resourcing committee, et cetera, to then kind of come back and ask more specific questions of the steering committee in terms of, is this project more important than this? Can this move out? I mean, I call it horse trading, but basically it's more than just a yay or nay here. You are really looking for kind of guidance in where it fits in the strategic goals of the organization, so that you can have the authority to really push it forward. Make sense? So I talk a little bit about so far about PMO maturity, but like let's think about that actually in terms of like system or technology implementation. So when I think about a PMO that's crawling, right? It's a younger PMO. They're looking to standardize their project intake. Maybe they have 5 or 6 different tools with different projects and different groups that do things all differently. They don't have all the same project data. Some people might do phases. Some people might do statuses. Some people might, have descriptions and like everyone does it a little bit differently. And then the workflows in terms of the reviews and approvals and the roles and see who needs to get involved when. Maybe they have an idea of it, but it really hasn't been well adopted, and it really isn't part of kind of like their technology stack or their tool that implements their PMO. Okay. So I could give more specific examples here. Reach out if you want to talk about your example. When I talk about a PMO maturity level that's more like a walk phase, like they have a project methodology. When people come in, like they can say, this is our project methodology. They usually have a solid project methodology. Maybe they even have a couple, maybe one for like IT and software and one for businesses or something. Um, they've adopted some sort of review and approval workflow. It often is like very meeting heavy, where like everything has to be done in meetings, or there's these big documents that get sent out ahead of time that maybe people are supposed to review, but they don't really. Um, there's not a lot of automations in terms of like, hey, this is really important. Look here, and this is a report that you can check out. And like their information usually is um is kind of manually entered, I would say, for the most part, and it's not really like well distributed across. But they have a solid methodology and they have this concept of review and approvals, and they're on their way. And then when I think about a TMO that's like mature and constantly optimizing things, like they have a clear prioritization process. They're able to prioritize both work that's coming in against work that's already happening. They know they probably have a backlog of areas that they want to automate. So their process is solid and they're just looking to take things off of their PMs, off of their sponsors, off of these hats, getting them out of meetings and really, into a more automated solution. They're usually integrated with other data sources. So whether or not they have like a time entry or a budgeting component, or, they're usually pretty well integrated with their document management, and finances and things like that. Maybe they're integrated with their requirements documents and their tasks and things like that. Oftentimes, if they're a tech organization, they've integrated Jira alongside with their project management or PMO functionality. They're constantly optimizing. They have a backlog of things that they're working on, and they're optimizing their PMO. It's always changing. They're getting feedback and retrospectives, and really applying those lessons learned to future projects. And they're being more strategic about the value, and they can actually say what the value and objective of their different programs and portfolios are, when they should be set up and sunsetted and all those things. They have a real focus on measurability. So not only do they have the ROI on their projects themselves and their programs, but they actually have the ROI and like, this is the value that the PMO brings to the organization. Here is the improvement. Oftentimes they'll show you trends. It's really beautiful. I love it. And then they're constantly iterating, right? It's not a static situation. They usually have several champions internally, tool champions, that are constantly iterating and improving, and they love to talk about it. So anyways, high level PMO maturity when I think about this. When I'm talking to a new organization, setting up a PMO, oftentimes they're coming to me because they think that I have this expertise in a tool. So like right now, the one that we're getting a ton of traction in is Smartsheet, like how to set up a PMO in Smartsheet, right? I'm going to give you a secret. It's actually not the technology usually. Most clients come in and they have multiple different, disparate tools that are coming in. Usually the technology and the tool and the platform is actually just a disguise for the process improvement and the change management that needs to happen in the organization in order to be a more effective project management office or to set one up. So when I think about it, it's this combination of technology, process, and people, right? You have this work management platform, you have the current state of affairs, the current processes in place when you're implementing a new work management or project management system. Um, like Smartsheet or Monday or any of these things, um, you want to be like you want to take the opportunity to not only like clean up your data, clean up your processes, but really transition some of your processes over. So whether that's changing some of the ownership, whether that's automating some of the things, like there's a transition that happens over the course of the entire implementation. It shouldn't just be a big bang transition, okay? And when you think about the future state, right? Like the future state is still in flux. It's not just like now we are in the future state in that state. And so oftentimes they'll say like, okay, so you're going to do an initial implementation on your work management platform, but you actually have an enhancements kind of round that's already planned when you go live, so that people feel comfortable that some of those things that kind of fell out of that initial implementation are still there. Sometimes they can even like be brought down to personas. So it's like, okay, so the initial platform is really focused on the project management staff, the PMO staff. But down the road, we're looking more towards the sponsors and the organizational leads and department leads and VPs and how they can roll up work, not just project work, but maybe project and operational work, or project work that's only within a single department. So sometimes they're called initiatives, et cetera. And something that I always like to bring up, right, is the importance of change management during this process and change management happening over the course of the entire project. So one of my favorite quotes is that project management is preparing the solution for the organization. Change management is preparing the organization for the solution. So bringing the people, the technology, and the process together and having an evolution for setting up a project management office. Now, some people, especially in large organizations, will say that setting up a PMO is, a multi-year affair. I would say maturing a PMO is a multi-year affair, but actually like setting it up, if you don't have that tool set and that process in place, if you don't have a process that's well adopted and it's a major pain point, it can actually be a very quick adoption. It's the making sure that you're constantly iterating and improving it over time and adding new components to it on an ongoing basis, versus just getting to that first step and then just staying, because then you kind of lose the momentum. So again, my name is Molly Yanis. I'm the founder at Echo Consulting, and we're all about project management, less failing projects, maximizing your growth, maximizing return on investment. So our tagline, grow more, struggle less, project management that fits. So when you think about a PMO, make sure that your project management office fits the culture of your organization. We're going to actually be doing a webinar in a couple months, I think, on PMOs and the fact that there's different types of PMOs. So there's ones that are more hierarchical and um, more directive in their approach, and then there are PMOs that are more supportive and consultative in their approach, right? So depending on your organization and depending on your pain points, the way in which you view your PMO and your organization can be very different. We help support clients find the right fit for project management and portfolio management. So our implementation process, regardless of what type of project is, we're going to do an initial discovery. We understand what your current state is, what those pain points are, what those challenges, and what those opportunities that you've already identified, and then add some ideas from our list as well. We'll go through a design phase. In a PMO implementation, that design phase oftentimes includes like initial data architecture and solution design and things like that, depending on your tool set. We'll do a build test phase, and really the design, build, and test tends to be pretty iterative in the way that we approach it. So we'll do kind of an initial build a couple weeks, and then we'll be doing weekly demos with you to get feedback as we go. And then we recommend piloting it with a subset of work. Maybe it's a single program or a single set of projects or a portfolio, before actually doing the cutover. So again, we recommend kind of this iterative approach of we configure it, we demo it, we get feedback, and then similarly, we do training and adoption throughout. So those demos are also considered trainings. Again, depending on the different personas you have. So like admins that will actually be working on the solution long term versus project managers that might just need to get trained once those templates already exist. So if you think about discovery workshops, we're focusing on project intake, PMO hierarchy, prioritization and approval, roles and responsibilities within your projects. We talk about project tracking, ongoing project tracking. So whether it's project phase, status, health, RAID, much more. We'll do a whole session on reporting and metrics and dashboards and visualizing kind of the status of where your projects are at. And then we'll talk a little bit about high level resourcing and budgeting, depending on what resourcing tools you have in house. So from a PMO discovery deliverables, again, requirements design, workshops, data architecture, and then solution design diagram. When we're talking about PMO hierarchy, I just put a really quick example, but you might have, for example, like a company-wide view. You might break it down into portfolios for like smaller companies. Often they have kind of like IT portfolio and then business project portfolio. You have programs, potentially you only have one or two underneath here, and then projects. So this is kind of the basic hierarchy. What we've done here, I won't get too deep into this, but basically what we're doing with a solution diagram is we're saying like, okay, what's your sources? Like, what are the sources of records? How do they integrate with other data? What are the different views that you need and how do they roll up? And then we kind of identify those different personas or roles within your organization as well. So the admin that actually is maintaining the data and making sure everything's working correctly, the person that's submitting these new ideas, the person that's looking across all the different projects, the person that might be managing a project and what tools they need for that. And this is just another example. Again, we're calling out different dashboards and metrics and things like that. So nothing too crazy here. When we go into a PMO implementation, the initial PMO implementation is this really like this portfolio or program configuration, and that oftentimes is done and it can be done in 10 to 12 weeks, depending on if you already have a system, right? If you already have a process that's adopted, if you already have a template, if you already have a methodology, then really it's just implementing it on the tool, configuring it, testing it, making a couple tweaks here and there. If you don't have that underlying data set kind of in place and you don't have that structure, we need to do a little bit more discovery and really support you in developing those processes. And we know best practices and we've worked with a lot of different companies, so we can provide a lot of recommendations of places to start so you're not starting from scratch. But you as an organization have your own vernacular, have your own vocabulary, and an understanding of things that work and don't work, that we have to kind of incorporate this to really get that buy-in and work through. Depending, it can be really useful to have your project management methodology also built in the same place that your portfolio methodology is in. So projects roll up at a task level instead of just a project status level of like this project is yellow or red, or this project budget is yellow or red, actually being able to dig into the specific budget or the specific project plan or specific RAID log. Um, and then again, I mentioned like having additional enhancements after it's live. Resourcing can be its own whole ball of worms. So we do basic resourcing capacity planning here, but if you want to get like a lot deeper in planning out, oftentimes you do need to incorporate time tracking, forecasting, resourcing, and that can potentially need an add-on tool depending on what tool set you're on. The prioritization projects and ROI tracking, if this isn't a practice that your organization is already participating in, it's usually something that we recommend after we get an initial kind of time forecasting component done, because that oftentimes plays into this prioritization conversation. And then I think I mentioned earlier this idea that the PMO oftentimes is like the leader in this space, but once other organizations see that you can manage non-operational work in a very structured way and roll it up, oftentimes they want to be able to overlay the projects that they're working on with other initiatives that their department might have, or other OKRs or something that their specific department is working on. So Anyways, so this was a really quick overview of a project management office and some of the structures that, Echo approaches. So my name is Molly Yanis, and I'm with Echo Consulting. We are working with a lot of different companies right now, setting up project management offices, implementing work management systems, and we also offer things like staff aug for project management, business process and transformation services, and all sorts of other good stuff. So if you are looking for help in any of these challenging areas that we just mentioned, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can reach out via email, you can call or text, you can check out our website that has a contact form on it. Or if you're comfortable, go ahead and set up a calendar. We do a free discovery call. I'm happy to talk through any of your issues. If we're not the right fit, we'll point you in the right direction, and we're always happy to give advice. If you're not yet ready to reach out, we do offer free webinars, and we do have a YouTube channel you can check out with a lot of these types of videos where we're giving some free advice. So I wish you all the best. Happy New Year. Bye.